So my impression is, if you want it to work, it works for you. So you have one past life session just to kind of get your feet wet. Then the next time you come, you do a little bit of a shorter past life session. And then at the end of that session, you go to the last day, or excuse me, the end of that life, and we navigate around your childhood a little bit, what was going on, what was important in that life, because that's going to be useful information later on. At the end of that life, we review the life, how did I do, then you cross over, and then this is called the gateway, and pretty quickly you encounter your guide. Now I have to say there's levels, though there's no judgment for the levels, but there's levels of advancement on the other side. More advanced souls kind of skip the guide and go straight where they need to go. The rest of us usually are met with a guide, and then they review your life. So how did I do in that life? What was my goal for that life? And my medium friend, Beecham, said, well, who's getting the information? And so the way it works is often I will ask the person to put the guide's answers in their mind, and then the guide is speaking through them. Or a lot of times I'll just ask them, what is your guide saying, if that doesn't work. So, and everybody's different. Some people need a lot of assistance along the way, and some people are talking so much it's hard to keep up with. So some people are getting full-on downloads, and other people are having a little more hesitation, but either one, we usually get what we need. So they review that life, and first of all, when you meet your guide, this is your guide, and I know as mediums, you guys have lots of guides, but this is your guide that's been with you through all of your existence. So you are your guide's graduation present. So when the guide reaches a level of advancement where they're becoming a teacher, they're given a soul, you, to then kind of, nurture and develop. So that's who usually shows up for the person. And oftentimes other loved ones will show up too. So this is like a beautiful moment. This is when there's often a lot of emotion because, in fact, I'm getting goosebumps. There's this reunion of you and your guide, and you have now, reconnected again. And so that's often a beautiful, quiet moment where I'll step back and people can just be there in that. And then the guide will give them feedback. You did a wonderful job. And I just have to say, in the books, it's loving and it's kind and it's all that unconditional love that we all know is there and that we connect with. But I have to say, I had one session where the guide was really annoyed at the person. And I was like, this can't be real. This isn't in the manual. This isn't in the books. They're not supposed to be bad at you. So I haven't had a chance to check with the trainers yet to see if anybody else has ever had this happen. But that's not the case. And this particular soul was a friend of mine, and she hadn't given permission for me to share any of it, but afterwards it was so interesting, she agreed. So, but it's just the most, I don't know, since it was interesting, I'll just share a little bit. And in that session, the guide was annoyed because this soul was a little bit of a goof-off soul, and they pretty much found out that if they didn't get their act together, they weren't going to be allowed to continue to incarnate because they were wasting lives. And I was like, oh my God, this is, the book says it's always good, and they're always nice, and I literally was thinking, is the guide pulling a trick on me? Because sometimes they'll joke, and tease the souls a little bit. But when we got to the counsel, which I'll talk about in a minute, the wise soul in charge said, I'm so sorry that I was so hard on you last time because you have become so serious. You need to lighten up. And so the message was of love, but I guess the previous time maybe they weren't, doing so good. So the message for that person today was kind of relax. You don't have to be so serious. It doesn't have to be so hard. And the wise soul even said, I'm sorry, I kind of scared. It was like they scared him straight, But the general rule is, it's this loving reunion. People cry because of the closeness, and it's beautiful. Okay, and I realized I've gone on a long time, and I didn't watch when I started.
You're good.
When did I start? Just so I can.
You're good.
Okay. Well, let me move to the next station stop. So that was a little bit about meeting your guide. Then oftentimes people go to, I want to make sure there's plenty of time for questions. There's often a place of healing. When I did my own session, it was a waterfall. I had someone who was on a crystal bed. Someone else was in warm water, sort of like a sea, and there was warm breezes, and they were sort of floating on the water. But again, this is a time where I will actually be quiet for a little bit. So it's basically recharging and healing, particularly if they've had a very hard life. So my mom was disabled, which sometimes I'll share about. Oh, and the harder the life, typically the more advanced the soul, because you're choosing to kind of test yourself and develop in a different way. Anyway, so my mom was disabled. So I'm guessing she had a lot of healing when she crossed over. In fact, my medium friend, when he did a session for me, he said she was helping souls adjust to the other side. Because we have jobs over there. As he told me once, my medium friend, it's not all angels and fairy dust. Like, that's real life. This is school. So we were over there doing all kinds of things, which, okay, I'm getting out of order. But I was going to say with my mom, I'm sure there was a fair amount of healing. But it's basically to sort of help your soul recover from what you just went through. Oh, and I had one person who they were met by their guide and some other souls from their soul group, and they were dusting them off. And when we got to the soul group, they said they were dusting off some of the things from the life. So they were kind of cleansing and healing it. So after the place of healing, oftentimes it's time to meet your soul group. And this is where, we'll say who is there. And sometimes people just see energy and beings. Sometimes people see a group of friends sitting around a restaurant, having coffee and smoking and drinking. The wild soul, there was a lot of drinking, and her soul friends were called, their names were Hell Yeah, and it was like a renegade soul group. And each group has its own little characteristics. I told you, hers was the most interesting. But it's a place, so usually you'll meet your soulmate. So we often do have a primary soulmate that we incarnate with over and over, and oftentimes that is our intimate partner, but not always. We will meet the other people and we'll ask who was in the life that you just lived, who in this group is in the life that you're currently living, and you get to find out sometimes some of the contracts that we put together. And there was one person who was having a difficult time in the current relationship with the partner, and in the previous life, they had been unkind to that partner. And so they were grieving the way they had treated them in the past life. So it's, I feel like I'm going off topic, but it's just seeing this life within the context of all of your lives. And sometimes we'll even go back and visit another past life if your group or your council thinks that's important. So, like I said, let me kind of keep going, and then I want to hear your questions and see how much of this is resonating with you. Different soul groups have different personalities. Sometimes the group is a teaching group. Some groups make energy and do other things that we don't completely understand. Some groups are creating life on other planets. You're often in school. So again, that is real life. And then whatever we're working on over there, we come here to sort of try it out. Oh, and Earth is supposed to be especially hard because there's a lot of pain and suffering. And it isn't that way in all the other places. So my friend Scott, who did my past life training, and he's an LBL therapist, he says, I don't know what you guys were thinking, but kind of you signed up for the big leagues if you're here. You know, you are the brave souls. Because there's other planets where all you do is swim, or, just underwater. There's all kinds of other things going on. So this is the graduate school place, basically.
Can you comment on, you said your friend was LPL?
LBL, same as me. Life Between Lives, yeah, hypnotherapist. Yeah, he was my past life teacher, and he also does Life Between Lives Hypnosis. Thanks, Pamela.
Thank you.
Let's see. Oh, sometimes in the soul groups, they replay their lives and get input from each other. Like, how could I have done this differently, Oh, and the other thing I read in one of the books was, or maybe in a session, Or someone said they went and talked to their soul group and had a little chat, because we know time is very different. And they said, a little chat with their soul, with their guide after their life. And it was asked how long was the chat. And it was like 20 minutes their time, but 20 years our time. So time is, so this is a speck, over there. The most interesting soul group I've encountered so far, and I'm going to talk next about the Counsel, was the person's soul group was a counsel. And the counsel doesn't usually incarnate anymore. These are the wise beings overseeing all your lives. But she was a council member, and they were helping other souls. And so the whole session I had to throw out the script. Oh, and that's the other thing. They're finding nowadays the sessions are all going off script. Like, for whatever reason, as the veil is thinning, it's not like this predictable little process anymore. Now it's, who knows? So I had to put everything aside because the guides actually said to me, they got annoyed with me at one point, and they just said, yeah, this doesn't apply to her. And so she was a council member, and when we were trying to figure out why she had incarnated, it was like, she didn't come to learn anything. She knows all she needs to know. She and her council incarnated to help the earth, to help us. So that one was one I just did recently, and it was really amazing. But as a general rule, your soul group are the people you incarnate with over and over, and you're working on stuff on the other side, and then you come here to kind of, it's like your internship or your field work, to kind of put stuff into process. And so when you come back, you're sort of saying, how did it go? How did we do? What did we learn? What could we have done better? Okay, the Counsel is the wise beings that oversee all your lives. It's a time of love and support, other than, like I said, my one friend who, when she went, she saw Mr. Mighty, who looked like Santa Claus. And she said, if you see him, you're in trouble, because it means he didn't do good or something. I know. I was like, this is not in the manual anywhere. So, and he's the one who said, you need to lighten up. I'm sorry I scared you last time. So your counsel is a place of love and support and encouragement. People can also bring questions to the session, like, what is my purpose in life? Why am I here? How am I doing? Why are my partner and I struggling? I mean, people ask anything and everything. And this is the time when we often ask their questions. You get to find out, I was going to say your goals for this life, but that comes a little bit later, but a little bit, and how this life fits within all your lives. And has anybody heard of the now time? They talk a lot about now time. So it's the sense that I just tell people time is very bendy. So we're there between your last life and this life, but you can also ask questions about this life while you're there and get feedback in now time, because there is no time. And again, my friend Scott, I saw a video that he did where someone in the audience said, I would love to know more about now time. And Scott said, that is a great question. And he said, I don't have an answer. Because he said, can you explain now time or something? So we're discussing with your counsel how this life relates to your previous life and how you're going to prepare for your next life, which is now, this life. But they can also give you feedback about this life while you're there. And that's usually kind of the place that's the most intense. And people have a sense of love as well as respect and awe. They're often on a little bit higher level. Often mostly male. There's usually females on the council, but the chairman is often male, which is sort of interesting. And sometimes they appear in Greek robes. Sometimes they appear as redwood trees. But it's 5 to up to a dozen or so beings who are on your council for specific reasons, and they are sort of, you're checking in, basically. So it can feel, when you talk about it, like it's going to the principal, but other than that one, which is one of 8,000, we're now up to 8,000 considering all of the new people who've been trained and done sessions, but usually it's a time of loving support. The Mr. Mighty isn't in any of the books. So I actually reached out to the Newton people and said, I think I have a case you might be interested in. Let's see. I'm trying to look and see if there was anything else I wanted to make sure and include. Well, if there is, it will come back to me later. The last place that people often go, and there's other places people go in between, classrooms, libraries, other planets. When I did my own, there was another planet, a lot of water involved, which did not surprise me because I'm a huge water person. That's my therapy, my meditation. So there's other places people go, but the place that most people wrap up is the pre-birth life planning station. And this was what got my attention once I recovered from the grief and wasn't just loving being on the other side. I was like, this is relevant to now, which is the place where you chose this life. And so we ask how many options were available to you, what were the other choices. Sometimes people see like movie screens that they can step into and go into the movie. I had one man said it was like a futuristic warehouse with pods, and you jump in and they shoot you off into a life. And he could try them on, but he was kind of impulsive, so he'd usually just jump in and go. A woman saw babies with Christmas tags, and you could kind of read what each life was going to be about. And she said she went up and down the aisles and she just knew which one was hers. So there's many different ways that you get to sort of see the lives available to you. And then you get to find out what the one you chose, why you chose it. And it could be this one had a lot to do with family, or, you know, like I said, the one person just kind of jumped in, and you get to see like, why did I choose this specific life to be me in this body, in this place, in this country? What were my goals for this life? What am I here to work on? Oh, and then there are questions like, how will I recognize the other souls I'm supposed to work with from my soul group? And then as the session wraps up, we'll usually say, you know, is there anything else? Why was this person brought here? What do they really need to get out of today's session? And that's actually some of what we even do in the past life, even the group session. And the only thing that's different is you're not answering me back and forth. So I'm asking all the questions and you're just answering in your mind. But you still meet with your guide afterwards. We get to ask how that life, now I'm wrapping up and going back full circle because I read some notes about the past life part, where you'll have a past life and you will actually cross over and most people meet their guide. And so we just do the first station stop in all of this in the group setting, but it's usually very powerful and meaningful, and whoever wants to comes up front and then we go through it and it kind of puts all the pieces together. So that's kind of the big picture, and I'm watching the clock, but I don't know, how much time would you say we have for questions?
Go ahead.
Okay, so does anybody have any questions about any